And welcome to Kent's Cabaret Theater here at my fantastic Magic Center in Georgetown, Texas. I'm here this evening to conduct a broken wand ceremony for our friend and departed compeer, Jim Baldauf. And sadly, this is the fourth broken wand ceremony in less than 12 months. It started in July of 2020 when our friend Ramon Galindo passed at age 99, and then Bob Carroll, Ranger Bob, we lost him, and then Stan Doc Seaton, and now Jim Baldauf. And each of these four magicians had a global impact on the world of magic, and they were treasured members of the Austin magic community, and we miss them all. And as far as Jim, it's interesting, he and I may have actually crossed paths in 1957. See, the first time I was invited to his house, he was showing off some of his stuff like we do, and he showed me one of these. He said, look, this is really old. And I just started laughing because I said, Jim, I've got like probably 24 of these. This is the souvenir program from one of the shows featuring Harlan Tarbell, the creator of the famous Tarbell Magic Course, at the Rice Hotel in Houston, Texas, 1957. And I was 14 years old, Jim was 13. I know that because we were both born in 1943. I was born in early January, he was born in late December, so I suppose I'm a year older. But as a kid magician, I saw people just discarding these things, and so I went around and picked up a whole bunch of them and kept them for souvenirs. But neither Jim nor I remember meeting each other, seeing each other. I mean, conventions in those days always had well over 1,000 people, so we didn't actually get to know each other until each of us, as a much older person, moved to Austin and became active in the Austin magic community. And Jim was very active in IBM Ring 60, SAM Assembly 206, the TAOM, which is the Texas Association of Magicians, and we're having our convention in Austin in Labor Day weekend this year. In fact, I suspect I have these memories of talking to Jim at IBM Ring 60 meetings. That's probably where I met him. And what I found out was he was a very interesting person. And you'll get a sense of that by watching this video tribute.
So I would like to welcome the president of the Association for the Study of Peak Oil and Gas USA, Jim Baldauf. And before you stand up, Jim, Jim, as of yesterday, is actually now President Emeritus of ASPO USA. Jim is not just the president, he's one of the original co-founders of this organization. He has held this organization and gotten into where it is today. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. But I just wanted to recognize that Jim is really, we're going to be celebrating Jim in different places during our 2 days together. But I'd like to have him reflect on where we've been and where we may be going and how it's come to a point where he finally may be able to be a special representative of the organization and not have to herd cats on a regular basis as he has been. So please welcome Jim Baldauf.
Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Monica Trauzy. With me today is Jim Baldauf, co-founder and president of the Association for the Study of Peak Oil and Gas. Jim, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Monica.
Jim, peak oil is something we've been hearing about for years. It's somewhat slipped under the radar here in Washington a bit over the last few years. Why doesn't the peak oil discussion play a more significant role when we talk energy policy in Washington?
Well, that's why our conference is being held in Washington this year. We are trying to bring the message to policymakers.
That means if we have more renewables, more alternatives online, that means we have more wiggle room, a little more time to play with in terms of how much oil we have?
That's right. And you see, we're always going to need the oil, but we need to save the oil for those things that only oil can do. Roger is an advisory board member with ASPO USA. And soon before we had our first on-campus colloquium, Roger and I and a few other people were arrested right down the street in front of the governor's mansion, George Bush's governor's mansion. We were having a peaceful news conference out there, and Governor Bush was running for office and for president. I guess he was going to show the nation how he dealt with them protesters. So they threw us in jail. We sued them and we won, making Roger Baker and I the only people who have ever beaten George W. Bush. It was a freedom of speech issue, and we not only got monetary damages, but we had it written into law that henceforth that the Texas governor's mansion and the public sidewalk in front of it fell under the provisions of the United States Constitution. So we like to think that we restored the rule of law to the Texas governor's mansion.
KXAN, Austin News at 5.
Some rare artifacts that belong to famous escape artist and magician Harry Houdini have turned up here in Austin. Today they were given to the Driscoll Hotel, Houdini's home away from home when performing here in Austin. The belongings included several postcards and letters, a statue, and a coat. They were given to a local man more than 50 years ago by a lifelong friend of Houdini's. Houdini performed here in Austin in 1923 at the Paramount Theater.
Some magical history at the Driscoll Hotel earlier today, a return of sorts for famous escape artist Harry Houdini. Reproductions of some of his most precious belongings were on display and on sale. When Austin oilman Jim Baldauf was a boy, he befriended a Houdini associate, and that's how he came by the Houdini bust.
The Driscoll Hotel was Houdini's home away from home when he was performing in Central Texas. He stayed here. He performed at the Paramount Theater right around the corner. He was hung upside down from the Littlefield building, and he escaped from chains and a straitjacket hanging upside down.
Some of the proceeds from the reproductions will go to the Austin Magic Camp.
It was a common theme.
It was a magical day here in Austin. Remember the famous escape artist Harry Houdini? Well, some of his personal belongings are on display in Austin. Some of Houdini's belongings were given to a lifelong Austin friend over 50 years ago, and now those items are being shared. There's a personal bust of the magician and a stage coat worn by his wife Bess for a European tour. We also got a glimpse of one of Houdini's props that he was able to escape from in just 17 seconds.
All right, would everybody count with me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop! I don't like this trick. Wait.
The Houdini items were only on display this morning at the Driscoll Hotel downtown. Houdini often stayed there while performing in town, but here's the really cool thing. Replica sales are going to benefit the Austin Magic Camp. So if you'd like more information, we've created a link for you on kview.com. Just click on the news link section.
The master of escape may be long gone, but Harry Houdini is helping raise money for a local nonprofit magic camp. Austin oilman and magic buff Jim Baldauf says Houdini's stage coat, posters, letters, and several other items were handed down to him by a mutual friend. Thursday, the items were shown for the first time at the Driscoll Hotel. Reproductions of the Houdini items will be sold through the Kent Cummings Magic Camp in Austin. The camp will receive part of the proceeds along with the Institute of Conjuring Arts in New York City.
We are here in my garage, which is normally the home of my Magic Kia Soul. But this week, it's been the home of the Jim Baldauf Magic Collection. Figure it's probably a Lee Jacobs reprint? No, I don't think so. Because if you look, you can see the gentle fold lines. See, people don't fold posters today, they roll them for collectively. But a century ago, they would fold them flat because they were intended for one-time use. And Thurston was the world's greatest magician a century or slightly more ago. There's also a little newspaper ad advertising his show. These are old magic sets, many of them from other countries. I know I saw one from Germany, and some of them are actually in pretty good shape and have most of the stuff, if not all of the stuff in them, and some of them are in terrible shape and hardly have anything of the original other than just the box, maybe the book that went with it. I believe Houdini just came back from the grave to tell us about the amazing stuff that Jim Baldauf found. He actually found a Houdini bust, which he made copies of, and he found Bess Houdini's stage coat, the coat she wore in vaudeville when she was performing with Houdini. He had it, and guess who was the same size as Bess Houdini? The girl behind the camera, my daughter, Carolyn. And so we did a big thing at the Driscoll Hotel to introduce all of this stuff to the general public, and my daughter Carolyn got to wear the same coat that Bess Houdini wore. Now, I can't sell that to you because guess who? David Copperfield has already bought it, and he has it in his secret lair in Las Vegas. You remember I told you about Houdini's bust? Jim Baldauf had, this is not the original, but he had a limited number made, and so that's the story in the poster that I had showed you earlier. Some things that you might not have seen before. This is supposed to be from a comic book, and I hadn't seen it before.
And that touching tribute was created by Jim's friend and mine, Chris Walden, and I'm actually going to ask him to come up and tell you a story. One of the slides that you saw was for the No Talk PK ring, and if you don't know what that was, well, Chris knows the story better than I do. Chris?
All right. We get out from behind the camera stuff here.
I'll tell you everything I know about the PK ring. PK stands for psychokinesis.
So as you saw in the ad there, we blurred out a portion of that because it was not for Muggle eyes. There were secrets hidden in there. But the PK ring is something that magicians use that is not to be known about. It's a secret. And there's a complication using it. They can make noise. It's what magicians call talking. Anytime there's unwanted noise while you're doing something, we call that talking. And you try to eliminate all of that through all sorts of nefarious methods. But the PK ring had some difficulties there. And Jim Baldauf came up with a way to buffer the sounds that could be made while using the ring. And he managed to connect with one of the most prestigious magic dealers in the world, Joe Stevens. Their stuff ain't cheap. And had them manufactured and had them sold through there. So that was a pretty big deal. And Jim was excited about it. But even before he made that deal, it's probably why he was able to make that deal, he did what Jim always seemed to do. Jim had this wonderful thing about him. It's something that I wish I had more of. Every idea that he had was something the world was just waiting for. It needed it to be unleashed. He would talk about his idea to everybody. He would tell you about it over and over. He would tell you about every nuance and every step that was going on pushing this thing into reality. And he was always so excited about it. I saw him that way with the PK ring. I saw him that way with the Houdini materials. And several other ideas that didn't necessarily make it into the light of day. He gave every idea his full attention, his full enthusiasm. And it's no wonder in the video we saw a little bit of the other side of him, the non-entertainer side of him, where he was going up against politicians and talking to them about fuel policy and that kind of thing. And that's why he was able to step into those arenas with people who had ginormous egos and be able to get their attention long enough to get an idea across to them. He was a powerful, powerful force of an idea. And I'm going to miss that. I'm really going to miss that.
Thank you, Chris. I still don't know what a PK ring does, but that's okay. I don't need to. You've seen and heard some of the things, but of course one of the things that magicians are interested in was the Jim Baldauf Houdini collection. And you got a good introduction to it from the video. But where did it all start? Well, Jim and I talked about it a lot. He was probably about 10 years old, and this old guy lived, I think he said, across the street. It was nearby. His name was Jim Bard. He was in his 80s, and he was an old vaudeville performer, an acrobat, actually. Oh, as a matter of fact, let's see, where do we...
It's on the floor.
Oh, it's on the floor, of course. A perfect place to find it, thank you. There's a poster of Jim Bard's acrobatic troupe, and Jim Bard would show Jim Baldauf his scrapbooks, like we old guys do, and he would tell him stories of all the cool things he did, like we old guys do, and Jim drank it all in. Jim Baldauf drank it all in. He thought it was all fun, it was fascinating, and it turns out that Jim Bard really was close friends with Harry Houdini, so his stories were exciting and fun, and when he passed away at age 87, I believe, a number of his things were given to the young kid who was so enthusiastic about magic and listened so carefully to his stories. And so Jim Baldauf had those things, and he kept them and he treasured them. They were a memory of his friend. And I remember him saying that they lived in the closet in his home for a very long time. And then something transformational happened. Jim read The Secret Life of Houdini, which is actually a 2-book set by William Kalush and Larry Solomon. And these books involve new research that hadn't been published before. And among them was a lot of information about the friendship between Harry Houdini and Jim Bard, the acrobat. They had performed together in the Welsh Brothers Circus. There's a photo of the Welsh Brothers Circus with Houdini and Bess and Jim Bard and his wife. And the couples became friends. And all of a sudden, Jim Baldauf realized, oh, these aren't just fun souvenirs and memories of the past. These are actually priceless historical artifacts. And he got them back out and looked at them with a new light and realized this needs to be shared. And so he spent a lot of time in his enthusiasm, as Chris said, finding the right company, the right person to make a limited edition of the Houdini bust, which was one of only 3 in existence, apparently. Copperfield said that he had one of the others. This is the bust. You saw it in the video. This is not the original. It's a copy. In fact, I can tell it's copy number 12. Okay, and Jim Baldauf signed it. This was presented to Magic Camp. Now, these things were selling for a lot of money, but Jim was also very generous, and he believed in helping young kids develop a fascination for magic. Where did that idea come from? And so he donated one of these to the camp with the idea that the camp could sell it and use the money for scholarships or keep it to continue to teach children about the history of the art of magic. Yes, Jim was a powerful Texas oil man, rather controversial, but his passion always remained magic. And so he would order the latest stuff, sometimes opening it up and performing it, and sometimes leaving it in its original package and never quite getting around to it. And as a magician, I can relate to that. We all have done that. And you may wonder why there are magic props all back here. Well, these are Jim's. And how did I wind up with them? And that's a whole nother story. A fairly sad one. 5 or 6 years ago, I got a call from Jim. I hadn't heard from him in a while. He hadn't been to the Magic Club meetings. And he said, Ken, I'm not doing well. I got divorced, I'm sick, lost my car, don't have a house, the VA is taking care of me, I don't know what to do, but the VA is going to help me. But the reason I'm calling you is that I'm several months behind on the storage locker where all my magic stuff is kept. And if I don't pay it off, they're going to throw it all away. And I can't pay it off. And I hate to have it all thrown away. If you can find a way to pay for it, you can have everything in there. I don't need it anymore. Well, those of you who have been to the Fantastic Magic Center in Georgetown probably realize I don't need a whole bunch more magic stuff. I have accumulated more than enough in my 72 years as a magician. Thank you very much. But on the other hand, if you know me, you know I care about the magic stuff. That's why we started the world famous Austin Magic Auction more than 40 years ago as a way of, in particular, helping widows, because most of the dying magicians were men, helping widows deal with their husbands' collections and selling those things and getting them back into circulation again. And so that was the plan for Jim's stuff. But for a while, we were still paying, I need to tell you this. I didn't have the money to pay for it, so I went to my friend Stan Seaton. Now, we are all so interconnected. Let me grab this. The last broken wand ceremony that I did was for my dear friend Stan Seaton. This picture was taken by his wife Millie on the day that we became friends. And Stan had created a business which he sold for millions of dollars. He always told me that he had more money than he knew what to do with. And so he knew and loved Jim. And so he says, look, I'll pay for the storage if you'll deal with the stuff. And I thought, okay, that's a pretty good deal. And so he paid the storage for all the back storage, and I think the next 3 months. And that's when I realized, we need a way to monetize some of this if we're going to keep it. And that's when my daughter Carolyn suggested, we could do a Facebook Live auction kind of a thing. because the Austin Magic Auction was at a hiatus. And so if you're into Facebook, you can go to Facebook Live and look up Magic Mondays, Kent Cummins, and you'll find a whole series of things. You saw some excerpts from them in the video of selling some of Jim's stuff as a way to pay for the storage so that he didn't lose all of the stuff. And eventually that just became counterproductive, and I think Chris and I rented a van and went and picked up. We went to the storage locker, and it had so much old beat up furniture in it that we couldn't hardly get to all the magic. So we took a truckload to Goodwill, we took a truckload to the dump. We finally, eventually, with the help of Magic Camp, got all of the magic stuff sorted out and brought it here, where it completely filled up the plastic storage building behind the Magic Center here. And it got a little bit rained on, and it got a little bit messed up, and some liquids poured into the bucks and the things that happen when things aren't taken care of. And so not long ago we decided that we would organize the stuff, and it's time to have another of the world famous Austin Magic auctions. And I've talked to Peter the Adequate, who is the current camp director of the Magic Camp, and he and I have agreed that once the Texas Association of Magicians convention is over, Labor Day weekend, we can start working on that as the next big project. And some of Jim Baldauf's favorite stuff will be featured in that auction. Now, some of the things back here, one of them is not Jim Baldauf's, and that's the so-called stocks of Zanzibar, the pillory stocks that you saw Carolyn and I perform on the video. The only connection it had to Houdini was that it's an escape trick. And escape tricks were not a big deal until Houdini made them a big deal. But it was actually made by local magician, the great Scott and Judy. And here's a little photo of the great Scott and Judy performing their nest of boxes. When Scott decided to retire from performing, he sold his big illusions, and I bought the nest of boxes, and I bought what he called the stocks of Zanzibar. But there's a very important connection to this. He didn't perform this as a typical escape. The pillory escape is a well-known magic illusion. He and Judy performed it as an exchange, just like you saw Carolyn and I do on the video. And that was inspired by a trick called metamorphosis. And metamorphosis was invented and made famous by Harry and Bess Houdini. And so it's quite possible that Bess Houdini performed metamorphosis, which is actually an escape in and out of a trunk, in the same stagecoach that Carolyn performed the great Scott's stocks of Zanzibar. So it's all connected. It's all connected. This bush is a mechanical marvel, and it blooms beautiful red flowers. I replaced all 8 batteries, but there was too much corrosion. It's going to require some delicate work, but I'm hoping I can make it work again. These rabbits are called hippity hop rabbits. It's a very traditional children's show trick. These are the biggest ones I think that I've ever seen. This trick is called the square circle. It's always been one of my favorite tricks. It happened to be one of Jim's favorite. He's got a guillotine. Oh yeah, that's another thing that we shared. So many of these things are going to be sold, again, for the benefit of the Magic Camp, something which he agreed with and spent both time and money to support. So we've got the stuff, we've got the stories, we've got the memories. I guess let's just take a moment of silence, and I'll let you think of your own Jim Baldauf story, or create one if you don't have one. And if you're on Zoom and you want to say something out loud, wave your arms like this. Chris will see you, and he'll spotlight you and put you on. Otherwise, we're all just going to take a moment.
Hi, my name is Mark Wilson, and I am a magician. As you see, I'm here with some of my props. Now, there are two types of magicians. All magicians purchase props. Some of the props that we purchase, we hope or intend to use in our show. And I'm here with some of the props that I've purchased in the past. I have more props stored elsewhere. The second sort of magician is the type that buys props with no intention of performing with them. They buy them for their historical value or their aesthetic qualities, and perhaps they want to own a piece of history, and those are collectors. They buy those props, they store them as part of their collection to preserve them, maybe share with others. I tend to be the sort of performer who tries to use my props, or at least hopes to one day use the props in performance. Now, this is only part of my collection. I have some of my stuff stored elsewhere in various locations, but I have one particular prop that is very interesting.
Okay, so here we are with the other interesting prop. Well, it's not a prop, but it is something that I used extensively in my magic shows earlier in my career. Everyone say hello to Thumpet, now named Brown. My lady, Dee, actually renamed the rabbit Brown, but originally my daughter, Alyssa, named it Thumpet. She was quite young when we got the rabbit. This rabbit came to me from Jim Baldauf. I actually purchased, I like to say rescued because that was really more the arrangement. I actually rescued 3 rabbits from Jim Baldauf, 2 white and 1 brown. Well, everyone knows magicians don't work with brown bunnies, they use white bunnies. And I didn't really need the brown bunny, but I thought, well, I'll give him a home and take care of him to help Jim out. And the funny thing is, after the normal lifespan of a rabbit, the 2 white rabbits passed away. They were female rabbits. But Brown is still with us. And it's been, I don't know, 15 years or so, way past what most rabbits tend to live. I need to do the math. I don't really know the exact year, but it's been quite some time. And as you can see, Brown is doing quite well. Anyway, I just wanted to share that story about Jim Baldauf's rabbits. I spent a great deal of time talking to Jim back in the day about magic and such. And so when he needed to find a home for his rabbits, he knew that I performed, that I was a worker, and that I would possibly use this very magical prop. Thanks for watching.
All right, then it's time for the ceremony itself. So, Chris, if you will figure out how to get out from behind all those cords again and bring me the magic wand.
This wand was made by my own hands. It was made in the traditional way that Fred Scott Donaldson always made them, much to my cat's chagrin. With one exception, there are no longer any McCoys in driving distance of me.
Oh.
And so I was forced to get dowels at Home Depot. So
Fred would not approve.
No, he would not, but otherwise I would have to make them myself.
Donna would not approve.
No. But here it is, Jim's wand.
Thank you, Chris. And again, I talk about how we're all connected. I told you that I had done 4 broken wand ceremonies in the less than 12 months. But I didn't mention that the very first broken wand ceremony that I did in 2005 at Judy's request was for Fred Scott Donaldson, the great Scott, the one who made the wands that we all used for a long time, and the inspiration even for this one. So the magic wand. It's an exceptional tool of the magician's trade. When I'm teaching kids about the tools of the magician's trade, they mention, oh, top hats and rabbits. Well, lots of people have worn top hats, and rabbits are used for lots of things. Well, silk scarves and coins, lots of people use those for many different things. Playing cards. Magicians use a lot of playing cards, too many, some of us think, or too much. But lots of people use playing cards without doing magic tricks, thankfully. Beautiful assistants. Corporate executives have those. The magic wand is the only tool of the magician's trade which is completely unique to the magician. Nobody else has a use for the magic wand. And yet, without the magician to wield it, there's no magic. It's just a stick. And so, I'll present these to Jim's family as a memento of the good times that they had together, the bad times, the magic they shared. And if you'd like a memento for everyone who's here, I put this together. It's Jim's favorite 2 business cards. His business card as a magician, which is enlarged here, and his business card for the Houdini bust, which is here, and there's also a Houdini coin. So everyone that's here as they leave will get one of these. And we also have on the table, I could pull one of those. This is a word find, Houdini based. This isn't connected to Jim as such, but I had about a dozen extras of these from when Marco and I visited the Houdini Historical Center in Appleton, Wisconsin. And since I never throw anything away, I still have a dozen of these. And so I thought, oh, well, so I put them on the table so people that are here in person could work them. But if you're watching this on Zoom, you may wish you had the memento, you may wish you had the puzzle. Well, I'll be happy to get you one. Just send me an email, kent@magichotline.com. kent@magichotline.com. And if I'm going to see you, I'll hand it to you. If you'd like me to mail it to you, I would suggest that you give me your snail mail address, and I'll be happy to put a memento in the mail to you. So, when a magician does something that we like, we applaud, laugh, cheer. But when we're truly inspired by an entertainer of any kind, when he's done, we rise to our feet, we applaud, we give a standing ovation. And Jim Baldauf inspired us in so many ways. If you're watching on Zoom, in the kitchen, in the living room, in the office, stand up. Those of you here, stand up, and let's give our departed compeer a well-deserved standing ovation. Jim Baldauf, this is for you. And that concludes our ceremony. Thanks for being here.